Hey everyone, so let's talk about the demonic. Now, I know what you're thinking, why am I sitting here randomly talking about demonic activity, and who am I to even talk about this topic? And I have to be very quick because I'm giving a very small time crunch here, so I'll try to cover all this really quickly. Now, the reason I even do this is because everything that I try to talk about in my page is so that I can try to help someone out in some way, no matter how small my reach may be. Someone hopefully out there can take that information and be able to use it in a positive way. And as for most of my other philosophical abstract ideas, I try to elaborate on those so that someone can take something away from that and it could hopefully benefit them in a major way, right? That's all I ever really want to do. Not for my purpose, not for anything else. I just want to help people. Now, who am I? Why am I sitting here talking about it? Well, if you know me personally, or if you don't know me personally, I spent the majority of my teenage years studying theological matters, and one of those things happens to be that theological matters. They are broken into many categories, and one of them were angelology, and then in angelology you have the nature of fallen angels, which is what demonology consists of. And demonology is very expansive, but it's not as interesting as you might think it is. So I would recommend you just try to look at God. That's the bigger picture. Now I'm going to give a brief recap of what demons are. So in the book of Revelations, the Bible, you see a very strong angelical war. And this war started when the angel Lucifer, which translates to beautiful light, he was so beautiful and such an intelligent angel that he actually thought he could be more than God. And he gathered a group of other angels and, formed a legion to rebel against God. And as we all know, spoiler alert, St. Michael the Archangel came in and he casted them out of heaven. And they are now living in hell, which is where they operate from. And, well, their entire purpose now is to get more souls away from God as possible. That is their entire purpose. And I know that some of you guys are not religious and you don't really care about like spiritual matters, but if you're still watching this, you probably care a little bit. So everything that I'm going to talk about is through the lens of the Catholic Church. I want to let you guys know that I am using the source of Exorcistica from Father Fortea, and I'm also using some of Father Chad Ripperger's stuff, he's a great, very, very intelligent doctor of the church and priest, PhD. So I just want to say that everything I'm saying is through the lens of the Catholic Church. Now that we covered what demons are, what are the ways that they operate? So demons operate in the extraordinary and the ordinary. So let's start with the ordinary. Ordinary is just temptation. So everyday temptations that draw you to sin. We all have our own vices. We all know what we struggle with, what sins we have. Those are where, that's temptation. It's probably the most effective way that they operate. The most common way is that. There is the extraordinary, which can be broken down into three main categories. Infestation, which is where demonic activity is congested in one singular place, or a given place, or an object. And there is demonic vexation or obsession, which is demonic obsession deals with bodily harm, any way that they are harming you, or really strong mental attacks as well. And you're getting, scratches in a certain area, and having all these weird occurrences to your body. Demonic obsession. There is demonic possession. So possession has to do with being possessed by a demonic or many demonic entities. Now, there's a very strong misconception about demonic possession. It's not as common as you guys may think it is. Two, it is not like the movies paint it out to be. The devil doesn't have that much power. And three, well, demonic possession is usually, they're not always possessed. They are, demonic possession happens within given episodes that trigger those things to come out, but the person isn't actually always going to be in that state. And then four, demonic possession doesn't take over your soul. It only deals with your bodily activities, right? Your soul remains intact, which is very, very important. If you are possessed, or if anyone's possessed, they are not to be isolated. They're not some outcast. They are a child of God who needs help, who has a clean soul, perhaps, maybe. Their soul is intact by this entity. For those cases, now we're going to get into like how to, go about everything. So in cases of demonic possession, it is necessary to contact your local parish or diocese, because only a bishop, appointed bishop, or an appointed exorcist by the bishop is allowed to give permission to an exorcism. So the exorcisms are usually, like I said, there's a very specific protocol that the church uses to determine whether or not you need an exorcism. And that's how they use the term, they see if it's like psychological trauma, or if it's both, or spiritual in nature. that is why it's important to just contact your local parish for those cases if you have a suspicion. Any signs of demonic possession, they usually are a person who, otherwise would have not been able to speak a language, and they have a new knowledge of that language. They speak in different tongues. A different kind of tone to their voice is another sign. Any aversion to the holy or sacred is very, very indicative. If you just have holy water, and if you have a crucifix and they have a very strong aversion towards that out of sudden, probably possessed. I'm just going to say that, but not always, obviously. It's just irrational, right? Like out of nowhere. And if you have someone who has, who they have a random new surge of strength, like they are abnormally stronger than than usual, right? Like let's just like look at a skinny old lady, right? And then all of a sudden she can like lift 500 pounds, right? Like things like that, all weird stuff, and they're acting aggressive where they used to be a peaceful person. They're cursing and such, blasphemous. That's if you have all those signs, you might have a case. But again, you have to report it to the church if you do need help. Now, temptation is very easy. It's not easy. It's simple. It's not easy though. It's prayer. The more you pray, the better off you'll be. The rosary, go to mass, you take your sacraments, take Eucharist. I will say that if you happen to have the medal of Saint Benedict, which looks like this, you are pretty good, honestly. He was an exorcist. It's a very effective tool that the church has given us. Holy water is a sacramental that is very, very strong against demonic activity. And honestly, the other two things like vexation and infestation are usually solved by deliverance prayers. The difference between deliverance prayer and exorcisms is that when you're having a deliverance prayer, you are talking directly to God and asking for his intercession to drive out demonic activity, whereas in exorcism you are directly speaking to the entity or demonic deity or deity to be expelled from that place. So that's very different than what the two very different things. Liberation can be done by everyone, and exorcism can only be done by a bishop or an appointed exorcist by the bishop, unless given permission, otherwise, right? Very, very clear distinctions. And I'm just gonna finish this off by talking about ways that people usually get themselves in that situation. Number one is if you sin, you're in a state of mortal sin, which is, if you want to look at the church, I'm not going to expand on the capital sins, but there's a set of mortal sins that we are not to commit. That's number one way to get yourself away from God, and otherwise in the hands of the evil one. And then there's also anyone that deals with the occult. I'm talking Ouija board, tarot cards, Satanism, rituals, psychics, and really there's a lot of ways that people try to influence supernaturally where God is not there. So anything that is not of God is demonic. I just want to say that. And I'm not going to go into specifically, but if you're dealing with something that claims to have supernatural power and it's not coming from God, it's always the devil. The devil will try to take place of whatever isn't God, and it's him, really. It's very binary when it comes to demonic. And so just, if you're not religious, I'm just telling don't mess with the esoteric stuff, the occult, the rituals, because that is most likely or almost always the way that people get themselves in those situations in the first place. So just do right by God, try to follow the teachings, try to be a good person, and by a good person I'm talking a moral, godly person, and you should be good. Have no fear. Everything the demons do, the devil does, is within what God allows him to do. Nothing that the devil does is outside of his control, and the devil cannot ever read your mind. That's something that he will try to act like he can do, but he can't actually do that. He can only decipher what you're thinking based on, try to decipher it based on your bodily functions and how you behave and think and all that, but he can never read your mind. The devil also can never, ever, ever be in the same place at the same time. Only God can do that, but they move at a different, it's called an Evo or an Avum, which is a different time scale than we're living in. So they operate faster than we do, but don't think that the devil has that much authority over you if you really are staying at the right side of the spectrum. It's just, don't fear, stay with the Lord, and you should be okay. Don't indulge into all that weird stuff if you're curious. Everything that you try to learn about the topic should be within what's given from the church. Yeah, hopefully this helps someone out there. Thank you.